So next up, we're going to be hearing two excellent research presentations. We will be joined by researchers at the Tsinghua University, People's Bank of China School of Finance. Now, their research on the philanthropy of ultra-high net worth families in China has never been shared in English. So we are absolutely thrilled that they're using Talking Philanthropy to establish this research in English for the first time. We'll be then joined by Ruth Shapiro, who's the co-founder and CEO of the Center for Asian Philanthropy in Society, and she will be sharing research from their center's latest Doing Good Index 2020 report. And this is going to provide a contextual overview, if you like, of philanthropy across Asia. And then rounding things off before our next panel on philanthropy and the environment, the Global Philanthropic CEO Ben Morton-Wright sits down with Global Philanthropy Advisor and author Chris Putnam-Wakely to discuss the current global context of philanthropy. And I'll be back joining you once again for our environment panel at 4 p.m. Singapore time.
Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session on the philanthropy of Chinese ultra-high net worth families. Thank you for your participation. I'm Jiawei, lead of the Family Business Community at the World Economic Forum and Senior Research Fellow at the Global Family Business Research Center at Tsinghua University. I'll be the moderator for this session as well as one of the presenters for this session. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ruixi Hao, Program Officer, Philanthropic Partnerships from the Gates Foundation, China. Dr. Gao Hao, Director of the Global Family Business Research Center at PBC School of Finance, Tsinghua University, and Vicky Xulei, Research Fellow, Global Family Business Research Center at PBC School of Finance, Tsinghua University. Together, we'll be sharing some findings of our research on family philanthropy in China. Now, without further ado, allow me to introduce and leave the floor to Ruixi and Dr. Gao for opening remarks. Ruixi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jiawei. Good morning, good evening, and afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your interest to learn this report on ultra-high net worth families giving in China. The purpose of this report was to understand the landscape and the key features of ultra-high net worth families giving in China and its evolution throughout the past decade. As a total charitable giving in China now stays at the level of about 150 billion RMB per year. We've observed a steady increase of individuals' donation from less than 20% up to now as a 25% of total giving. Among that, large giving above 100 million RMB counts for about 1/3 of total giving of individuals. Since we have kicked off this research back in 2016, the number of total billionaires in China has increased from about 400 to this year, 626. We've observed some large and visible giving by philanthropists in those years, very recently including Mr. Cao Dewang's donation of 10 billion RMB to set up a science and technology university in Fujian province. And a few years ago, Mr. Lu Weiding setting up the largest charitable trust with equity value of about 4.9 billion RMB. And recently, Dang Yanbao and his wife, Bian Haiyan, made commitment to carbon neutrality. And very recently, Pinduoduo's founder, Huang Zheng, committed to set up a foundation dedicated to science and technology. So numerous donations during COVID-19 last year in China as well. Together, we've seen philanthropists in China are slightly more vocal about giving, which we're happy to see. And joining role models of like Niu Gensheng, Charles Chen, you know them well, like Yang Guoqiang, He Xiangjian, and many others. Their efforts, we've observed, have collectively demonstrated the value of philanthropy, which is not only to support the vulnerable groups, but also to support the trial of social solutions that the government and the business sector might more hesitant to take risks. And their role models have also been shaping the identity of philanthropists in China, which is really need to be built along the years. So we have seen this trend also that philanthropists wants to come together for each other, to support each other and to learn from each other in this community and in this peer network. So this research have taken an interesting perspective. You will hear from Professor Gao and hear from Vicky later. And it is matching the Forbes Rich List and the Forbes Philanthropy List in about 9 years data. We've learned very helpful insights for our work in China. And we hope this research can help you, serving as a useful reference for your work too. So I will give the stage back to Jiawei, and they will share more. And we hope that we can continue the conversation with you all beyond today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruixi. May I ask Professor Gao to offer some opening remarks?
Thank you, Jiawei. Hello, everyone. I'm Hao Gao, the director of the Global Family Business Research Center of Tsinghua University, and also the project director of the research, the Philanthropy of Chinese ultra-high net worth families. As a result of China's economic development, there is a rapid increase of ultra-high net worth individuals in China. According to Forbes, in 2020, there were 491 Chinese billionaires, the second largest in the world. China ultra-high net worth individuals have played an important role in China private sector, as well as the development of the philanthropy sector. To have a better understanding of Chinese ultra-high net worth families' philanthropy motivation and behavior, and to learn the challenges they face, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation supported our center to conduct this research. You all know that China has a long tradition of giving back to the society and helping people in need. It is our hope that this report helps advance philanthropy by Chinese families, contributes to the prosperity to philanthropy in China, and inspires more Chinese ultra-high net worth families to share their love and care for others. I'd like to give you more information about our school and the research center. Tsinghua University PBC School for Finance was jointly established by China Central Bank and Tsinghua University on March 2012. The Global Family Business Research Center, or GFBC, was founded with the mission of exploring the knowledge of family business succession, cultivating next generation family business leaders, promoting the development of wealth management industry, and contributing to China and the world's long-range growth. For many years, GFBC has been devoted to the research in the areas of family business, wealth management, family office, as well as family philanthropy. Our center provides the think tank research for policymakers, government and industry organizations. Last but not the least, I must say thank you to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and also to its program officer Ruixi, and to all the philanthropists who participated in our research. Thank you for all strong support to make this research possible. Now, let's welcome Jiawei and Vicky, our research fellows, to present some key findings of our research. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gao, and thank you, Ruixi, for presenting the context and the purpose of this study. Now, let's Vicky and I myself present some key findings of this research. The floor is yours, Vicky.
Yeah, the slides, please. That's great. Thanks, Ruixi and Dr. Gao for your speech. Thanks, Ruixi, for your introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Vicky from Tsinghua University. Now I'm going to present you some of the key findings of the study. Firstly, let me brief you the research method. Our data is mainly from Forbes China Rich List, Forbes China Philanthropy List, the China Foundation Center, the GTA SISMA database, and the WISE's News database. We use data to do statistical analysis. We also do interviews with entrepreneurs, philanthropists, scholars, and professionals. And we use media sources, articles, and publicly available reports to make our study rich in content. To have an overall status and the trends of Chinese ultra-high net wealth families in wealth and philanthropy, we analyzed the data from the Forbes China Rich List and the Forbes China Philanthropy List from 2009 to 20. We can see that both wealth and donations increased during that period. However, families' donation grew in a more volatile way compared to the steady growth in wealth. The volatility in donation may come from some big events and policy change. Noticed that there is an obvious increase in donations starting from 2016, which could be affected by the promulgation of the charity law and China's targeted poverty alleviation plan 2015 to 20. In this context, from 2017 to 19, the maximum donations in China are given by one leading poverty entrepreneur. All his donations have been made to poverty alleviation. One of our interesting findings is that philanthropy involved with structural changes on the rich list, which reflects China's economic transformation in recent years. In the last decade, the drivers of Chinese economy shifted from manufacturing and real estate to technology. We can see a rising trend, a rising number of billionaires from tech sector, as well as a rising number of technology entrepreneurs on Forbes China Philanthropy List. Also, the donors from tech sector donate more on average than those from manufacturing sector. For example, the founder of Tencent, Tony Ma, announced to donate over $2 billion worth of his personal Tencent shares to his charitable foundation in 2016. This is a very large donation, also the representation of how tech philanthropists donate. But the shares will be donated through an unspecified period of time, so this is not on the Forbes China Philanthropy List. Property entrepreneurs' donation per capita also grew importantly in recent 5 years, affected by some real large donations, which have been mostly used to poverty alleviation. Across the age groups, donations made by entrepreneurs born in the 50s and the 60s have increased strongly in the past 2 to 3 years. As they withdraw from business operations, they will focus more on family philanthropy. Let's take Country Gardens Group's founder and chairman Yang Guoqiang as an example. He has been on the Forbes China Philanthropy List every year since 2009. From 2009 to 15, his yearly donations were between 100 to 200 million yuan and increased to 500 to 700 million yuan in the following 2 years. At the end of 2018, his daughter Yang Huiyan has been promoted as co-chairman of the group, marked an important point of the family succession. After that, Yang Guoqiang made larger donations, which were 1.6 billion yuan in 2019 and 1.5 billion yuan in the following year. So we suppose that the phenomenon of large donations triggered by succession will appear more in the future. More and more first-generation entrepreneurs will be transforming into the first-generation philanthropists in China. There is also a rising trend in post-70s and post-80s generations donation, which lends hope for the intergenerational succession of China's philanthropy. Culture and the social structure can essentially affect the way that Chinese families donate. Now, let's welcome Jiawei to present our findings about how cultural and social factors affect Chinese families' charity behavior.
Thank you, Vicky. So in the previous section, we saw a little bit of the philanthropic landscape and trend. Now we looked one level down at the foundation's data, and just to give you a little bit of the numbers, out of 172 family foundations in our data sample, we have 69 of them who have set up a philanthropic foundation. And amongst them, 23 are family foundations and 46 are corporate foundations. So on the data on 2018, the corporate foundations have donated $5.6 billion in total, and family foundations $4.2 billion, which is on average $180 to $250 million per foundation. So one thing we found out is that donations are heavily influenced by the donor's social structure. In 2015, on the right hand, we can see that 43% of the donations went to the donor's home province, and 53% went to the other locations across China, and only a small portion to overseas. And this setup matches the differential pattern that structure the Chinese society, which is a concept that the Chinese social relations are based on social networks of personal relations. As represented on the graph, by the graph on the left, relationships are defined by the proximity toward oneself, who is based at the center, and then relationships decrease as one moves out of the circle, which in turn defines the rights and obligations toward them. And this is what we observe in general as well. Typically, we see an initial philanthropic activity starting by helping one's kins and clansmen, and then as we move along toward the outer bound of the circle in helping the most difficult household in their own villages, and then also building infrastructures in their town, and finally helping out strangers. So the first finding in that on the foundation data is that donations are heavily linked to the donor's social structure, and this is one of the internal aspects of their donation motivations. So now, if we look at the next slide from the data on 2018, we can see that on the left, that amount of donations to the home province has decreased substantially from 43% to 23%. And then the proportion that went to the other provinces rose to 77% in 2018. And the reason behind is that China has launched a targeted poverty alleviation program 2015 to 2020. Now, on the right, as much as we can still see in the three coastal provinces like Guangdong, Zhejiang, and Fujian, that still there's a very high proportion of the donations going toward the same province. But on the contrary, if we look at Guizhou, donations from the other provinces have skyrocketed in 2018. And just for information, Guizhou is one of the provinces with the least revenue per capita, which is also the center of focus during the poverty alleviation program. So it has received the largest amount of donations in 2018, which accounted almost half of the total donations in our sample. So here we can see a quite dramatic change of the directions in a very short amount of time, and that we don't very often see elsewhere, where the missions or areas of focus of the philanthropic foundations are pretty much defined and stable. So we wanted to highlight one of the specificities of philanthropy in China, which is this link to the national strategy and the focus of the government. And also we want to highlight the role and importance of the government and public policy in supporting and guiding and unlocking philanthropy. So this campaign, led by the public sector and followed by private sector and civil society, has demonstrated being fruitful, because just in Guizhou province alone, over 9 million of population and 66 counties have been lifted out of poverty. In the next slide, we can see more granularity with the breakdown of the segments. Still on the right, in 2015, almost half of the donations went into education, which is historically an important area of focus in the Chinese society and also for families. This also has demonstrated the importance ultra high net worth families are giving to education. So here we see a particular prevalence of the use of the family foundations, which reflects also a little bit the more personal aspects and founder orientation. In our sample, that has translated into an appreciation toward higher education, but also in arts and culture and elderly care, etc. And also the appreciation toward higher education also explains why in Beijing we have a big inflow of donations, because this is where all the major universities are based on. On the right-hand side, we can see the data from 2018, where poverty alleviation became the most important area of focus. And this reflects what we have just described before on the focus on the national strategy. And interestingly, here families trying to contribute to poverty alleviation more with their corporate foundations as a form of demonstration of their corporate social responsibility. And for instance, Wanda Group has donated 1.4 billion yuan in one of the county, in one of the city in Guizhou as part of their poverty alleviation program. Similarly, Evergrande Group as well has donated 11 billion yuan in Guizhou. And also Alibaba Group has donated 10 billion yuan to explore the new models of poverty alleviation. So here we saw an explosion of the givings in that space in 2018, and many wealthy families are more and more focusing in that area, and we expect that trend to keep rising in the next future. So with that, I'll hand back to you, Vicky, for the last section.
Thanks, Jiawei. In the last part, our study identifies a potential pathway for ultra-high net wealth philanthropic families. The pathway starts from ideas, progresses into occasional donation, then to organized, systematic, and effective donations. There may exist a jumping point that the family can donate efficiently since the beginning. The donation mode depends on the motivation of the family and also closely related to the charity environment. Our study makes suggestions to policymakers, regulators, charitable organizations, and associations in order to move forward on families' philanthropic pathway. There is also some progress in the legislation of philanthropy in China that I'd like to share today. China National People's Congress initiates the revision of the charity law to create a better environment for the development of philanthropy. With the improvement of the legal environment, there is innovation in the form of family charity. An example is that Ruixi, CEO of the Hangzhou-based auto parts manufacturer Wanxiang Group, donated his shares worth 5 billion yuan in the listed Wanxiang Sannu to a charitable trust. This is the country's first equity-based charitable trust, also China's largest charitable trust for perpetuity. In our report, there are more cases of leading philanthropies in China, like Lu Weiding. We're not able to share all the information and the findings today due to the limited time, but you can download our report to learn more. Next, let's welcome Jiawei to present perspective from World Economic Forum.
Thank you, Vicky. And just to build on the last section, and because I have the privilege of being involved in that project and also working with global families and philanthropists in my role at the World Economic Forum, I just wanted to share on some of the key issues that we're working on, which is also to look at how families and family businesses can contribute to the stakeholder capitalism. And the idea is that today, we live in an era of multitude of crises, and the most important of all, a generational crisis, because we are pushing the environmental, financial, and societal cost into the future generations. And in our perspective, family businesses with their long-term vision are well equipped to look beyond the quarterly results and also think about future generations. So for the past 50 years, the shareholder primacy has dominated the management practice, and it comes to a situation where companies do everything to maximize profits, then do CSR or philanthropy to fix the problems created. So now the paradigm, as we are observing it, it's slowly shifting towards, or at least shifting away, and shifting toward the stakeholder primacy, where people at least are starting to question and to think about new models of doing business. And we see more and more businesses looking in that field. Examples such as Unilever, Roche, and many others have proven that businesses can be doing well while doing good. However, it doesn't mean that shareholder values are obsolete anymore. And au contraire, it's important to have a healthy finances, to have healthy finances to sustain the business. but only it should be seen as one of the elements of a function that maximizes stakeholder value and not the sole purpose of businesses. And this has been emphasized during the pandemic, which has revealed the rising inequalities and imbalances of our economic system. Today, consumers and investors and employees are asking questions about value and ethics behind businesses, and now it is not just something good to have, but a must. And this is why at the World Economic Forum and with Global Families, we are working toward a better model of businesses to address those systemic challenges. And I just want to share 2 points here. So while philanthropy, it's a must and it's an important enabler, we also find important the concept of business for good and capital for goods, which is basically a good and sustainable business has more positive impact than the other way around, and then trying to fix the issues created with philanthropy. And for that, we need to assess the overall externalities. As we measure impact in philanthropy, we need to be able to measure the overall impact in business, and that beyond the financial metrics that we are used to measure, and make sure that we have a positive overall footprint on the society. And this is especially true in the context of family businesses, because they cannot only act through their philanthropic foundations, but also on various family platforms, such as their business and their investment platforms. So with that, as we are drawing close to for this session, I will hand it over to Dr. Gao for some final remarks.
Okay, so thank you, Jiawei and Vicky. Yeah, and as in your presentation, that we can see that the philanthropy of Chinese ultra high net worth families, is a very instructive study. As I just mentioned earlier, the kindness and the generosity are important features in Chinese traditional culture. However, for the relatively young family business in China since the reform and opening policies 40 years ago, most ultra high net worth families still focus on growing their family businesses. As Winston Churchill said, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. As more first generation entrepreneurs retire, and with family succession ongoing, ultra high net worth families will pay more attention to giving back to the family philanthropy and also the society. Actually, the trend of donation has already begun. Little trips light great fires. Although now there are a handful of families donate generously, we can imagine that more and more ultra high net worth families are going to join the philanthropy camp in the future. May joint efforts be made to move forward philanthropy, harmony, and prosperity in China and the world. Thank you so much, and looking forward to our further exploring together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gao, for the closing remarks. I see that we are a little bit ahead of time, so maybe with the 1 minute left, we can also do a call for action and asking global, our audience and the global philanthropists to share their feedbacks and thoughts with us later after this session, and also to warmly welcome them to join our study as well. And I'm speaking as well for the World Economic Forum. Welcome everyone to share their thoughts on what I have just shared, and also global philanthropists to join us in creating this movement together. Maybe I can invite Ruixi for a final remark as well.
Thank you, Jiawei, Dr. Gao, and Vicky for this brilliant work. And I would also echo with Jiawei about the call for action. This is a time of uncertainty, and we see pandemic and other factors and negatively impacting people's life around the world. And we have very encouragingly to see philanthropists around the world are together combating this war and this battle, but at the same time, we do see them are collectively working together. So we hope this is an opportunity to continue our conversation about how we can do this together better.
Thank you, and a big thanks to our presenters. Thank you all for listening into this session. We're joined next for our presentation from Ruth Shapiro at the Center of Asian Philanthropy and Society. Stay tuned and see you in the next session. Thank you and goodbye.